The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the wind howling across the prairie. Not the snow slamming against the windshield. The sound was metal skidding over ice. And then, nothing. No sense of up or down, just spinning white in the sick lurch of my stomach as my little truck slid sideways off the narrow ranch road and dropped. I screamed once. The steering wheel jerked out of my hands. Something cracked, glass shattered. The world tilted, then slammed to a stop that knocked every bit of air out of my lungs. For a long moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. This is how it ends, Lena. Of course it ends in a snowstorm. It was supposed to be a new start. A different life. A Christmas far away from everything I was running from. Instead, I was upside down in a ditch on some back road in the middle of nowhere, Montana, with snow pouring in through a broken window. The cab smelled like spilled coffee and gasoline and cold metal. Okay, I whispered to nobody. Move, Lena, just move. The truck had landed at an angle, nose down in the drift, driver's side smashed against a fence post. My seatbelt dug into my chest. My right knee screamed when I twisted. My fingers were numb and clumsy as I fought with the buckle. It finally snapped loose and I slid sideways, hitting the roof the floor hard. Snowflakes blew in, stinging my face. The wind whistled through the broken glass. Somewhere in the back, behind the seats, my little fake Christmas tree that I bought at a dollar store in Billings lay crumpled and bent, silver tinsel hanging like torn icicles. I laughed once. A broken little sound. Merry Christmas to me. The door wouldn't budge. I shoved, kicked, braced my shoulder and pushed until my vision blurred. But the metal had twisted around the fence post. My knee gave out and a sharp pain shot up my leg, making me gasp. No, you don't get to fall apart. Not now. I clawed my way toward the passenger side, dragging my throbbing leg behind me. Glass crunched under my palms. The whole truck creaked like it might shift and roll further. Please don't, I breathed. Not yet. The passenger door opened with a horrible shriek of protest when I threw my full weight against it. A blast of wind knifed in, carrying more snow. The world outside was a wall of white and shadow. I hauled myself out, half falling, half sliding down the side of the truck to the ground. My boots sank into knee-deep snow. Pain flared hot in my ankle and my knee at the same time. I stumbled, grabbed for the fence line, and my gloved hands hit the rough frozen wire. Frost clung to it like crystal sugar. My fake Christmas tree, dislodged in the crash, tumbled out after me, landing in the snow with a soft hump, its plastic needles catching flakes like the real thing. Out here, on the empty winter prairie, there was nothing but gray sky, white ground, and a dirt road that now cut off into blowing snow just a few feet away. I couldn't tell where the horizon ended and the storm began. The wind cut straight through my city coat, not meant for this kind of cold. I could already feel my fingers going from numb to burning. My right leg shook violently when I tried to put weight on it. I leaned my forehead against the top rail of the fence and closed my eyes. You did it, Lena. You finally left him. You finally drove away from all of it. And you might just freeze to death for the trouble. The image flashed, unwanted. Behind my eyelids, Andrew's office with its spotless glass desk and the little ring box he held out like a contract instead of a promise. The tight line of his mouth when I said no the second time. The way he told me I'd never make it on my own. Never. I opened my eyes to the white emptiness. Watch me, I whispered. My voice got eaten by the wind. I started walking. More like hobbling, really, dragging my bad leg and clinging to the fence. Every few yards I had to stop, panting, my chest aching with the cold. My truck already looked like a half-buried animal, disappearing under the drifting snow. My plan had been simple. Drive to Whisper Creek, Montana. Take the job at the cafe on Main Street. Rent a tiny room above it. Serve coffee and pie to ranchers and tourists and pretend I'd always belong there, brave, simple, clean. Not upside down in a ditch on a back road because the GPS said this way was faster. The wind picked up, throwing needles of snow into my face. The road vanished completely. My cheeks burned, then went numb. My lashes crusted with ice. I can't see, I choked. Panic scraped at my ribs. I fought it down and kept going, one dragging step at a time, following the fence because it was the only solid thing left in the world. At some point I slipped. My bad leg buckled and I went down hard on my side. Snow rushed up around me, cold and soft and heavy. For a moment the temptation to just stay was overwhelming. To curl up, let the snow cover me, and stop trying so hard to prove Andrew wrong. No. Anger flared. Hot. Fierce. I dug my fingers into the snow and tried to push up. My knee screamed. I bit down on a cry. That's when I heard it. Hoofbeats, slow and steady, muffled by the snow but unmistakable. The creak of leather. The soft jingle of metal. My heart slammed into my throat. Hey! I tried to shout, but it came out as a cracked whisper. Over here! The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. A dark shape emerged from the blowing white horse and rider, both dusted with snow, like they'd been carved out of winter itself. The man on the horse sat tall and easy despite the storm, reins loose in one gloved hand, the other wrapped around the horn of his saddle. His hat brim was crusted with ice, shadowing his face. But I saw the strong line of his jaw, the broad set of his shoulders, the sheer grounded calm of him. He drew his horse to a stop beside the fence, eyes scanning the ditch, the wrecked truck, and then me. He swung down in one fluid motion, boots crunching in the snow. My breath caught. He was big, all rough denim and worn leather, his coat heavy and dark against the white, a wool scarf wrapped around his neck. Snow clung to the stubble on his jaw. But it was his eyes that pinned me. Gray-blue, like a winter sky on the edge of clearing. Steady. Assessing. You all right? He asked, voice low, carrying somehow through the wind without needing to be loud. I swallowed. A sharp inhale burned my lungs. My truck slid. He followed my shaking gesture, taking in the wreck, the broken post, the track where I dragged myself out. His gaze dropped to my leg where I was half kneeling, half sprawled, snow soaking through my jeans. He moved closer in 2 long strides. The smell of leather and cold air and something faintly like cedar wrapped around me. Don't try to stand, he said quietly. Not yet. His gloved hand touched my shoulder, firm and gentle at once. Heat seeped through the fabric of my coat. You hit your head? I don't know. I let out a shaky laugh. Everything hurts. His mouth tightened, just a fraction. Name? Lena, I whispered. Lena Hart. Caleb Hayes, he said. You're bleeding. He slipped off one glove and reached up to brush the side of my temple with his bare fingers. His touch was warm and careful. When he brought his hand back, there was a faint smear of red on his thumb. His brows drew together. You're safe with me, he said, very quietly, like a promise he'd made before and meant every time. Something in my chest loosened, just a little. Snow swirled around us. His horse shifted, snorted, steam puffing from its nostrils. I need to get you out of this cold, Caleb went on, voice calm but firm. Can you put any weight on that leg? I can try. He slid an arm around my back, another under my knees, and for a heartbeat I froze as he lifted me like it cost him nothing. My broken pride flared, years of being told not to be a burden, but the wind knifed through my coat, and my leg throbbed so bad, I nearly blacked out. I let my head fall against his chest. His heart beat slow and solid beneath my cheek. Stay close. Please, he murmured as he shifted me in his arms and carried me toward the horse. The words slipped under my skin and settled there, warm and terrifying. Stay close, please. If only he knew how many years I'd stayed where I shouldn't. He mounted with a practiced swing, hauling me carefully into his lap, tucking me against him. He pulled his heavy coat around both of us, shutting out some of the wind, his arms a solid wall of heat. The leather creaked. The horse snorted and started forward, picking its way along the fence. Snow crunched under its hooves. Ranch is a mile or so that way, he said, chin dipping toward the whiteness ahead. We won't make it in this, not with your leg. There's a line shack closer. We'll hole up there till the worst passes. His voice stayed low and sure. The storm could rage all it wanted. He sounded like someone who knew how to move through bad weather. I closed my eyes and let the rhythm of the horse and the steady rise and fall of his chest lull my panic. You're safe with me. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. The line shack appeared out of the storm like a memory. 1 minute there was nothing but swirling white and the dark smudge of bare cottonwoods. The next, a small squat building sat hunched against the wind, plumes of snow piled on its roof. Rough-hewn logs, a single window, a door warped by years of weather. Caleb swung down and then lifted me with the same care he'd used before, carrying me over the drift that had formed against the stoop. The boards creaked under his boots. He shouldered the door open with a grunt. The air inside was bitterly cold, but at least it wasn't whipping my hair into my eyes or numbing my face. Dust motes floated in the thin gray light from the window. A bunk was built against one wall, an iron stove in the corner, a table and 2 chairs in the middle of the room. No frills, just what a working cowboy needed. He set me on the bunk and straightened, his breath clouding in the air. I'll get a fire going, he said. Then look at that leg. I watched him move, every action efficient. He shrugged out of his coat, leaving him in a dark flannel shirt that pulled just slightly across his shoulders when he bent to stack kindling in the stove. His hands were big, strong, a thin white scar running along the back of one knuckle. When he struck a match, the brief flare lit his jawline, the bump in the bridge of his nose like it had been broken once and never set quite right. The kind of face that looked like it had been through some things. The fire caught quickly, flames licking up and painting the small room in gold. Heat crawled out of the stove, slow but steady. You shaking because of the cold or shock? He asked, glancing at me. Maybe both, I admitted. My voice wobbled. He crossed the room in 3 strides and crouched in front of me. Boot, he said gently, nodding at my injured leg. We need to see what we're dealing with. My fingers fumbled with the laces. He brushed my hands aside with a soft, let me, and worked the frozen leather loose. Every tug sent flares of pain up my shin. A sharp inhale. I hissed between my teeth when he eased the boot off. Sorry, he murmured. He rolled up my jeans, careful, revealing an ankle already swelling and coloring dark beneath the skin. He blew out a breath, the sound low. Well, you did a number on it, but it's not twisted all the way around, he said. That's the good news. And the bad? Gonna hurt like hell for a bit. He met my eyes, letting the truth sit there instead of dressing it up. I weirdly appreciated that. He stood, grabbed his coat, and folded it into a rough pillow behind my back. Then he went to his saddlebag, rummaged, and came up with a small tin and a length of clean cloth. This'll help with swelling till I can get you to town, he said. Comfrey and arnica. My sister makes it. Swears by it. He warmed some of the salve between his fingers before touching my ankle. His touch was firm, steady, not timid but not careless. The warmth of his skin seeped into mine, chased away some of the cold ache. I clenched my jaw as he wrapped the cloth around my ankle, but when his thumb grazed the inside of my calf by accident, a different kind of shiver ran up my leg. My breath caught. He froze. So did I. For a moment the world narrowed to the place where his hands were on me, the soft crackle of the fire, and the sound of the wind pushing uselessly at the walls. Then he cleared his throat and finished tying off the wrap. All done, he said, voice a little rougher. Thanks, I whispered. He moved back, giving me space. The air suddenly felt colder. You hungry? I honestly don't know, I admitted. Today's been a lot. His mouth quirked like he understood more than I'd said. I'll make something anyway, he said. You'll feel better with something warm in you. He set a battered pot on the stove, poured in water from a jug, and added dried meat, potatoes, and onions from a crate by the wall. The scent of simmering stew slowly filled the tiny shack, mingling with the smell of wood smoke. I watched him move around the little space like he'd done it 100 times. The way he checked the draft on the stove, how he watched the window, and the way the snow hit the glass, like he could read the storm. Thank you, I said quietly after a while. He glanced over his shoulder. For the stew? Haven't tasted it yet? Might be awful. For finding me, I said. For not just riding on. He turned fully at that. Something flickered behind his eyes, like a shadow passing across the sun. I don't ride on when someone needs help, he said simply. Ever. The way he said ever made me wonder who hadn't been helped once. I pulled in a slow breath, feeling the heat from the stove finally seep into my bones. You were headed to Whisper Creek? He asked after a moment, stirring the pot. Yeah. I drew the blanket he'd handed me tighter around my shoulders. I was supposed to meet the cafe owner today. Start work tomorrow. New in town? Brand new. I let out a humorless little laugh. I've never even seen it in daylight. Just pictures online. He nodded, lips pressing together. Leaving something behind? He asked quietly. I could have lied. Could have made up some funny story about loving mountains and wanting a change. Instead, I found myself saying, a man who thought owning me was the same as loving me. His hand stilled on the spoon. I swallowed. He wanted a wife who looked good at parties and never argued with his plans. I wanted to breathe. I stayed too long. You stayed years too long, Lena. I'm sorry, Caleb said quietly. Men like that. They don't deserve what they ask for. Warmth spread in my chest that had nothing to do with the stove. What about you? I asked, surprised by my own boldness. You leaving something behind when you ride into storms? His jaw tightened, just enough for me to see. He looked back at the pot. Just trying to do better than I have before, he said. That's all. I wanted to ask better than what. But something about the way he said it told me not yet. He ladled stew into 2 tin bowls and brought one to me. Our fingers brushed when I took it. Careful, it's hot, he murmured. We ate in companionable silence, the wind roaring outside, the fire crackling. With each bite, I felt more solid, more real and less like a woman made of fear and ice. After we finished, he banked the fire and checked the door latch. Night fell early in winter, turning the window into a dark square. Storm's not letting up, he said, glancing at me. We'll have to stay here till morning at least. Maybe tomorrow night too, if the drifts don't ease. The idea of being snowed in with a stranger should have panicked me. It should have sent me straight into all the worst-case scenarios my parents had fed me about men in danger. Instead, my shoulders relaxed. Because if there was one thing I felt when I looked at Caleb Hayes, it was safe. Is there another bed? I asked, heat creeping up my neck as I looked around the small space, trying to sound practical. His mouth twitched. Afraid not. Just the bunk and the floor. You should take the bunk, I said automatically. I'll be fine on the floor. He raised an eyebrow. With that ankle, not a chance. But he shook his head. You keep the bunk. I've slept on worse than a floor more times than I can count. He grabbed his bedroll from where it was rolled up in the corner and started to spread it near the stove. The wind howled, rattling the window, making the whole shack shudder. A tremor ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. You are not alone. You are not alone. Caleb paused, looking back at me. His gaze softened, like he could see the memories crowding behind my eyes. I'm right here, he said quietly. I'll be 10 feet away. If you need anything, if you get scared, just say my name. My throat closed up. My voice shook. Thank you. He nodded once, like it was settled, then lay down on his bedroll, one arm behind his head, staring at the ceiling. I lay back on the bunk, pulling the blanket up, listening to the wind and the steady, slow rhythm of his breathing. Sleep didn't come for a long time. My ankle throbbed. My past whispered. At some point, one heard him shift on the floor. You okay? He murmured into the darkness. I'm fine, I lied. Silence stretched between us. Then, softly, he said, You don't have to spend Christmas alone anymore. The words hit me like a hand on my heart. Warm, sure, uninvited, and exactly what I wanted. My eyes stung. Don't cry, Lena. Don't you dare cry. I don't even know you, I whispered. You don't owe me anything. You're right, he said after a beat. I don't. He shifted again. I could almost see him turning his head toward me in the dark. But there's room on my land and in my life for one more lost soul, he said, voice dropping low. If you want it. My breath trembled. If you're listening to this with the snow outside your own window, maybe you know that feeling. The first time someone offers you a place to belong again. If you want to know what he tells me next, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of our story. Because that night, in that little line shack, something inside me quietly shifted. And I had no idea yet how much it would cost him. By the time the storm finally broke, the world outside looked brand new. Caleb opened the door to a sky so bright and blue it made my eyes ache, the snow sparkling like someone had thrown a billion diamonds across the prairie. He whistled low. Well, that'll slow us down some. The drifts were piled almost to the windowsill. His horse, tied in the lean-to on the side of the shack, snorted and shook its mane when he dug a path to it, steam curling from its nostrils. I can ride, I said from the doorway, leaning heavily on the frame, my ankle throbbing in time with my heartbeat. You can barely stand, he said, giving me a flat look that somehow managed to be gentle. We're not putting you on a horse yet. What's the plan then? I'll hike back to the ranch, get the team and a sled, he said. Bring you home proper. Home, I echoed before I could stop myself. Something flickered across his face. I mean, you're home, I corrected quickly, heat rising in my cheeks. He gave me a small, almost shy smile that did something strange to my stomach. Yeah, he said quietly. My home. He saddled the horse and checked his cinch, every movement easy and practiced. I watched him through the doorway, the way he moved like part of the land himself. How far is it? I asked. Half-mile back the way we came, he said. On a good day, that's 10 minutes on horseback, 20 on foot. Today, with snow like this, it'll be closer to 40 or 50. You can't walk that far in this, I protested. You'll freeze. Done worse, he said. And I'm not leaving you here more than I have to. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a revolver, checking the chambers before sliding it back in place. He caught my raised eyebrow. Coyotes, he said. Sometimes wolves. Just in case. I swallowed. You're really selling this whole move to the country thing. He chuckled, the sound warm. You'll be fine, he said. Keep the fire going. There's more wood stacked behind the stove. Don't open that door unless you hear my voice. I'll be back before you can start missing me. My heart did a weird little stutter at that. I'm not sure that's how that works, I murmured. His smile deepened, lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. Guess we'll find out, he said. Then his expression sobered. He stepped closer, filling the doorway, and for a second the space between us crackled with something I didn't have words for yet. He reached out and gently tugged the brim of my borrowed hat down over my forehead. I'm here, he said, voice low. I'm not going anywhere. The words landed in the center of my chest and stayed there, heavy and warm. Then he turned and swung into the saddle. Snow crunched under the horse's hooves as he rode away, his figure growing smaller against the endless white. Alone in the shack, I tended the fire like it was a fragile heart. I thought about Andrew. About how he'd once left me at a hospital after a fight, taking my car so I couldn't leave too. How I waited hours for a cab because I didn't want to give my parents one more reason to say they'd been right about him. He told me no one would ever stay for long once they saw the real me. Too stubborn. Too emotional. Too much. Standing there in that little shack, I realized how much of my life I'd spent trying to be less. By the time Caleb returned, sweaty and snow-dusted, pulling a wooden sled behind a pair of broad-chested draft horses, I decided two things. 1, if I survived this winter, I would never shrink myself again. 2, this man was not allowed to be just another passing kindness. He stomped snow off his boots and grinned at me, teeth flashing white in his scruffy face. See? He said. Told you I'd come back before you missed me. I rolled my eyes. But my smile gave me away. He bundled me in blankets and lifted me onto the sled, tucking the covers around me with big, careful hands. When he pulled the sled's rope and the horses leaned into their harnesses, the runners hissed softly over the snow. The world slid by, all white fences and frost-glazed cottonwoods, the big sky arching endless overhead. His ranch came into view as we crested a small rise, a cluster of weathered buildings, smoke curling from the chimney of a 2-story farmhouse, a big red barn standing sentinel beside it, corrals and sheds scattered like children's blocks. A windmill turned slowly, its blades crusted in ice. It looked solid, rooted, like it had been waiting there a long time. "Welcome to the Hayes place," Caleb said quietly, a note of something like pride in his voice. "Welcome home," a traitorous part of me whispered. He helped me inside, the warmth of the house wrapping around me like a hug. The entry smelled like wood, leather, and faintly like coffee. Handmade garlands of pine and dried orange slices hung along the stair rail, and a small nativity scene sat on a table by the door, carved from dark wood. "You decorated," I blurted, surprised. He shrugged, suddenly looking a little shy. "My sister came by last week with her kids. They guilted me into it." "It's beautiful," I said softly. The living room held a worn leather couch, a big stone fireplace with low flames crackling, and a Christmas tree that reached almost to the ceiling reel, its branches draped with simple ornaments. Pine cones, white lights, a few glass balls. "You can use the guest room down here," he said, steering me toward a door off the hall. "Easier than trying to get you up the stairs." The guest room was small, but warm, with a quilt on the bed in shades of deep red and cream and a single pine bough in a jar by the window. He set me on the edge of the bed and straightened, suddenly looking uncertain in his own house. "If you're okay here for a bit, I'll go check the stock," he said. "Storm like that. Always someone busted through a fence or drifted into the wrong pasture." "Of course," I said quickly. "Go, I'll be fine." He studied me for a second like he wanted to say something more. Then he nodded once and left. I lay back on the quilt, listening to the distant sounds of the ranch coming alive, doors opening, hooves on packed snow, the far-off whinny of a horse. I couldn't explain why, but listening to him move through his world steadied something inside me. Over the next week, life fell into a rhythm I hadn't known I craved. Caleb rose before dawn, the floorboards creaking under his boots as he moved around the kitchen. The smell of coffee would drift under my door, luring me out. "You don't have to cook for me," I'd protest as he slid a plate of eggs and hash browns in front of me at the table. "I'm cooking for me anyway," he'd reply, lips twitching. "You're just..." Additional motivation to make it edible. After breakfast, he'd disappear outside to feed the horses, break ice on the water troughs, check fence lines. The cold air would rush in every time he opened the door, snow clinging to his hat and lashes when he came back. I did what I could from inside. Washed dishes, mended a torn work shirt I found draped over a chair, swept. It felt strange at first, doing small domestic things after years of being told my worth lay in how well I fit a man's image of success. But there was a deep, quiet satisfaction in it here. No one was grading me. No one was watching with critical eyes. One morning, I insisted on at least helping with the wood. "Absolutely not," Caleb said, crossing his arms when I hobbled toward the back door with my wrapped ankle, leaning on the crutch he'd fashioned out of an old broom handle. "I can carry small pieces," I argued. "I'm not made of glass, you know." His mouth tightened. "You almost froze in a ditch, Lena. Forgive me if I'm not eager to see you go back out in the cold." I bristled. "I'm not helpless." He blew out a breath, looking up at the ceiling like he was asking it for patience. "I know that," he said finally, voice softer. "Believe me, I know that. But I also know how fast this land takes from people who think they can outstubborn the weather." We held each other's gaze for a long moment. "He's not controlling you," I reminded myself. "He's trying to protect you." "Tell you what," he said after a beat, some mischief sneaking into his eyes. "You want a job? You can be my official fire tender. I'll bring in the wood, you keep the stove and fireplace going. That way, I don't come back into a frozen house and you don't get frostbite. It was such a simple compromise, offered without edge, that my resistance melted. Fine, I said, trying to hide my smile. But I'm making dinner tonight. You cook? He asked. Better than I drive on ice, I said dryly. He laughed then. Really laughed. The sound filled the kitchen, bounced off the cabinets, and landed right under my ribs. We slipped into a pattern of small talk and shared chores that felt more intimate than any candlelit dinner I'd ever had. He'd come in covered in snow, stomp off his boots, and tell me about the stubborn Mara that refused to take her medicine. I'd sit at the table peeling potatoes, telling him about the customers I imagined I'd have at the cafe. One afternoon, as the sun sank pink and gold behind the cottonwoods, I watched him through the kitchen window as he chopped wood. His axe rose and fell in a steady rhythm, splitting logs like they were made of paper. His movements were sure, grounded. Every line of him said he knew exactly where his body ended and the world began. He paused once, resting the axe head on the block, and looked up at the house like he could feel me watching. Our eyes met through the glass. Heat rose in my cheeks. He lifted one corner of his mouth in a half smile that said he'd caught me. I ducked away from the window, heart pounding. You're a grown woman, Lena. Get a grip. But that didn't stop the thought that slid in quietly as I stirred the soup on the stove. He feels like home. Later, when we sat at the table, steam rising from our bowls, I heard myself say it out loud. This house, I said softly, looking around at the worn wood and the glowing Christmas tree and the way his presence filled the space without crowding it. It feels like someone's lived here forever. He studied me over his spoon. You feel like home, he said quietly. I went absolutely still. My heart knocked once hard against my ribs. He froze too, like he hadn't meant to let the words out. Silence stretched, full and fragile. My voice came out shaky. You don't even know me. He set down his spoon. I know you got in your truck and drove away from a life that was killing you inside, he said softly. I know you rather risk a Montana winter alone than stay where you weren't wanted for who you are. I know you're stubborn enough to argue about carrying kindling when your ankle is the size of a grapefruit. My eyes stung. And I know, he added, voice dropping low, that every time you laugh in this kitchen, this place feels less like a house and more like what it was always supposed to be. My breath came out in a shaky exhale. He can't mean that. Not really. Not after a week. But the thing was, I believed him. If you're listening, I'd ask you now, if you were sitting by the fire with us, do you think I should trust him yet? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments. Because me? I already knew my answer, even if I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. It was the memory of my father that finally cracked me open. We were in the barn, of all places, the afternoon light slanting in through the high windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. The air smelled like hay and horses and old wood. Caleb was showing me how to brush the old gelding Gus, one of his gentler horses. He stood on the other side of the animal, big hands moving in slow, sure strokes down the horse's neck. Like this, he said. Firm, but not rough. Let him feel where you are. I mimicked the motion on my side, my palm moving over warm, solid muscle under coarse hair. Gus flicked an ear back, then relaxed. You're good at this, Caleb said. You've got a calm touch, I snorted. That's not what my ex would say. He looked up, eyes meeting mine over the horse's back. What would he say? Caleb asked, voice quiet. That I'm too much, I said, my hand faltering for a moment. Too intense. Too emotional. Too. Everything. Caleb's jaw tightened. I'd like to have a word with him, he muttered. A laugh bubbled out of me. Shaky but real. Get in line. My mom is already planning what she'd say if he ever shows his face at Christmas again. He smiled at that, then sobered. What made you finally leave? He asked. I hesitated, fingers resuming their path down Gus's neck. It was stupid, really, I said. At least that's what Andrew would say. We were at this Christmas dinner with his partners. Their wives were all perfect. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect laughter at the perfect moments. I swallowed. Gus shifted but stayed calm under my hand. Someone asked me what I wanted. I went on. Like, what I wanted for the next few years. Not what he wanted, not what was good for the firm. Just me. I could still see the way the entire table had gone quiet, all eyes sliding to Andrew. I said I wanted something small, I whispered. Maybe a little house. A dog. Maybe kids someday, if it felt right. I said I wanted holidays that weren't to networking events and weekends that didn't revolve around his schedule. I let out a brittle laugh. He smiled, I said. Right there, in front of everyone, he smiled and patted my hand and said, Lena has the sweetest little dreams, doesn't she? Like I was a child talking about being a princess when I grew up. The humiliation burned fresh in my chest, just talking about it. Later that night, we fought, I said. He told me if I wanted that kind of life, I should go marry some small-town cowboy who didn't mind wasting his potential. I stroked Gus's neck a little harder. So, I finished, I decided to go find one. Caleb stared at me. Then he laughed, a low, surprised sound that turned into something like a groan. He leaned his forehead briefly against Gus's shoulder. Of all the reasons I thought you might have had, he said, straightening, eyes shining with a mix of anger and amusement. That might be my favorite. You turning me into a walking cliché? I asked, trying for lightness. I'm saying, he replied, his gaze steady on mine. That man had no idea what he was throwing away. The barn went quiet around us, just the horses shifting, hay rustling softly. What about you? I asked after a moment, my voice softer. You said you were trying to do better than before. Better than what? His hand stilled on the brush. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set the brush aside and leaned back against the stall door, arms folding over his chest. I had a brother, he said. Younger. Name was Luke. There was a weight in the way he said his name that made me set my own brush aside. We grew up here, he went on. Same land. Same house. I was the serious one, supposedly. He was the wild one. Fast with a joke, faster on a horse. Never met a risk he didn't like. His eyes went distant, looking past me to some other version of this barn. I tried to keep him in line, he said quietly. Always on him about focusing, planning, not taking stupid chances. We fought about it all the time. He swallowed, throat working. One winter, he continued, voice turning rough, we had a storm not unlike the one you got stuck in. Fence went down on the north pasture. He wanted to ride out and fix it right then. I said wait till morning, when the wind eased. My heart thudded painfully. I already knew this wasn't going somewhere good. He called me scared, Caleb said. Said I was too careful, too controlled. I said some things back that I regret every day. Told him if he wanted to get himself killed proving he was braver than everyone else, go ahead. He let out a shaky breath. He went, Caleb whispered. And he didn't come back. The barn seemed to shrink around us. We found him after the storm, he said, eyes shining with unshed tears. Horse had slipped on ice. Landed wrong. Luke broke his neck. They said he probably died quick. He looked at me then, the raw grief in his gaze hitting me like a physical thing. But I heard my words in my head for months after, he said. Over and over, go ahead. Get yourself killed. The ache in his voice sliced through me. Caleb! He shook his head, jaw tight. Ever since then, I take storms personally. I don't walk away if there's a chance someone's out in one. I don't let people I'm responsible for take stupid risks. I don't... He broke off, looking down at his hands. I don't always know how to do that without holding too tight. Without thinking, I stepped around Gus and came to stand in front of him. I reached up and touched his arm, feeling the solid muscle under my palm. You didn't kill your brother, I said softly. The storm did. The ice did. His choices did. Not your words. His throat worked as he swallowed. Tell that to the part of me that still hears them every time the wind picks up, he whispered. I will, I said. Every time it does. Our eyes locked, the air between us charged and heavy. You're safe here, he murmured suddenly. My breath hitched. You just told me you feel responsible for everyone in storms. That sounds like a burden, not safety. He shook his head, his gaze never leaving mine. I'm saying, he replied, you're not a burden. The words slid into a place deep inside me where years of quiet hurt had piled up. I didn't realize I was crying until he reached up with one rough thumb and brushed away a tear. His fingers lingered at the edge of my jaw, his breath warm on my face. If I touch you any longer, I might not want to let you go, he said, voice low, almost ragged. My heart slammed against my ribs. Maybe, I whispered, almost unable to speak. I don't want you to. A sharp inhale shuddered through him. He froze. So did I then, slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind. He leaned in. His lips brushed mine. Soft, hesitant. My hands slid up his chest of their own accord, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. His other hand came up to cradle the back of my head, holding me as if I might break, and as if I were the most precious thing he'd ever been trusted with. The kiss deepened, still gentle, still careful. But there was heat in it that warmed parts of me I thought were frozen for good. When we finally broke apart, foreheads resting together, both of us breathing hard, I felt different, seen, chosen, scared out of my mind. We go at your pace, he murmured. I nodded, eyes closed, my hands still tangled in his shirt. Because me? I kissed him back. But now there were glances that lasted a second too long. Tell me something good, I said quietly, my head resting against the back of the couch. Something that makes all the hard parts worth it. He thought for a moment, staring at the flames. First foal of the season, he said. When you walk into the barn before sunrise, and there it is wobbly and new and trying to figure out its legs. You listen to the wind howl and instead of worrying, you just breathe. What about you? He asked. I thought about sterile offices and long commutes, about nights spent waiting for a key in a lock that turned later and later. I swallowed, my eyes burning. Caleb had insisted on having him check my ankle properly once the roads were halfway passable. "You're lucky," the doctor said after poking and prodding. "Could have been a clean break." "She's got spirit," he said to Caleb. "You'll have your hands full." "You're thinking of going into town already?" he asked. "She hired someone to work through Christmas. If I can't even get there, she might give the job to someone else." His jaw worked. "You have a roof here." "And I'm grateful. But I can't live off your kindness forever, Caleb." "Is that what you think this is?" he asked quietly. "That's not what this is," he said roughly. "You're not Luke." "I know I'm not," I whispered. "But do you?" Silence snapped taut between us. He stepped back, shoving a hand through his hair. "I think," he said finally, "we both might be more messed up than we like to admit." I let out a shaky laugh. "Probably." He looked at me then, something like fear and longing wrestling in his eyes. "Stay," he said. Just that one word, raw and unpolished. My breath caught. "For Christmas," he added, voice rougher. "After that, we'll figure it out." My chest tightened. "I'll stay," I whispered, some of the tension drained from his shoulders. He stepped closer, lifting his hand like he might touch my face again, then stopping halfway, fingers curling into a loose fist. "Some days," he said quietly, "I don't know how to hold on to something good without crushing it." I reached up and gently uncurling his fingers, thread mine through his. "Then we learn together," I said. "Deal?" He stared at our joined hands for a long moment, then nodded once. "Deal," he murmured. We kept that deal. We decorated the big tree together, my ankle propped on a pillow on the coffee table while he handed me ornaments. His big hands were unexpectedly careful with the fragile glass balls his grandmother had made. We went to the general store in town once after the roads cleared more, him driving the old truck, me leaning against the cold window, watching the snow-covered fields slide by. Whisper Creek was small, a handful of buildings along a main street, smoke curling from chimneys, the smell of wood and cinnamon in the air. People greeted Caleb by name, nodding, lifting hands. "That your fiancé, Hayes?" One old rancher called from the porch of the feed store. Heat rushed up my neck. "No," Caleb said, but his gaze slid to mine as he added, "Not yet, anyway." I nearly tripped on the curb. Inside the general store, with its creaky floors and shelves of canned goods and Christmas candies, Caleb introduced me to everyone like I was. "This is Lena," he'd say. "She's staying out at my place a spell." Cora, the cafe owner, turned out to be a sturdy woman with kind eyes and flour on her apron. She listened to my halting explanation and nodded. "Storms don't care about hiring schedules," she said. "You come by after Christmas when that ankle's better. We'll talk." Relief flooded me. On the drive back to the ranch, the sun setting pink behind the mountains, I glanced at Caleb. "You didn't have to stick your neck out for me like that," I said. He shrugged one broad shoulder. "Didn't feel like sticking my neck out," he replied. "Just telling the truth." "What truth?" "That you belong here now," he said simply, My heart did that stutter step again. If you want more slow burn cowboy Christmas romances like this, you know what to do. Subscribe and keep the fire going with us. Because just when I started to believe I might have finally found a place to belong, the winter reminded us how quickly it could take everything away. It happened 3 days before Christmas. We were on our way back from town, the truck's bed loaded with feed sacks, a new set of harness straps, and a box of last-minute Christmas supplies Cora had insisted we take. "Tell me again why you bought the biggest ham in the store," I said, eyeing the box. "Because my sister's bringing her kids," Caleb replied. "And those kids eat like they've never seen food before." I smiled, warmth filling me at the thought of a full table, noisy and alive. The sky was a clear, hard blue. The sun bright but weak. Snow glittered along the road, packed from the plows. "I like this," I said softly, watching the fence posts flick past. "All of it." He glanced at me, something tender in his gaze. Yeah, I said. "I feel like I'm finally somewhere I don't have to prove I deserve to breathe." His hand resting on the gear shift twitched. "You never had to prove that," he said quietly. "Not to anyone worth keeping." I opened my mouth to answer, but the words died on my tongue. Because up ahead, on a shaded stretch of road, the glint of ice flashed just a fraction too late. He saw it the same moment I did. "Hold on," he snapped, knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. The truck hit the patch of black ice and lost traction immediately, back end fishtailing out. The world lurched. My stomach dropped as the truck skidded sideways, the rear swinging toward the ditch. There was a split second where everything hung suspended. Then the rear tire slammed into a hidden snowbank with a jolt that snapped my teeth together. The truck lurched. The feed sacks in the back shifted violently, slamming against the tailgate. Instinct screamed at me to grab for the dashboard, but before I could, Caleb's arm shot out across my chest, bracing me. The movement cost him precious traction as he tried to correct the skid. The world narrowed to screeching metal, flying snow, and the looming bulk of that pine. The loaded branches, already stressed by the weight of ice and snow, gave way as the truck's impact shook the trunk. I saw it in horrifying slow motion, the massive limb cracking, tilting, then crashing down toward the cab. Caleb made a sound I'd never heard from him before, a raw, furious sound. He shoved me sideways, pushing me toward the passenger door and away from the falling weight. "Caleb!" The branch hit with a thunderous crack. Everything went white. When sound and color came back, it was in pieces. The nauseating smell of airbag dust. The tick of the cooling engine. Snow swirling in through a spiderweb of cracks in the windshield. My head rang. "Caleb?" I croaked. He was half slumped over the steering wheel. Airbag deflated, snow dusting his hair. "Caleb!" Panic made my voice high and sharp. I fumbled with my seatbelt, fingers clumsy. He groaned, eyes scrunching shut. "Don't!" He sucked in a breath, his face going gray. "Don't move too fast." My gaze dropped. The branch had smashed part of the hood and roof on his side, crumpling the metal. It had missed his head by inches, but I could see his leg twisted at a sick angle where the dashboard had buckled in. My stomach lurched. "I'm going to get help," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm going to..." He grabbed my sleeve, fingers digging in. "Seatbelt," he gritted out. "First. You hit hard too." I stared at him. "Caleb, your leg..." "Lena," he snapped, a spark of his usual command cutting through the pain. "Seatbelt. Now." Hands shaking, I unclipped it and slid free, wincing as my ankle protested. The passenger door opened easier than the last time I'd been in a crash. I stumbled out into the blinding cold, legs weak. For a moment I just stood there, breathing fast, the cold air biting my lungs. Then I heard him suck in a sharp breath through his teeth and it snapped me into motion. "Hold on," I said, more to myself than to him. "Just hold on." I scrambled around to his side, boots slipping on packed snow. The driver's side door was bent, the frame warped. I yanked at the handle. Nothing. Come on, I panted, pulling with everything in me. Come on. It finally gave with a screech, opening just enough for me to wedge myself between the door and the crumpled cab. Caleb's face was pale, sweat beading his forehead despite the cold. His hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Hey, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Hey, look at me. His eyes met mine. Even in pain they were steady. You're okay, I said. We're okay. I'm going to get you out. He let out a strangled laugh. Can't feel my leg, he said. Not sure I'd call that okay. Fear punched me, but I shoved it down. Can you move at all? He tried. A guttural sound tore from his throat, and he went gray-green, his head falling back against the headrest. Okay, don't do that again, I said quickly. Just stay still. I looked around wildly. No other cars, no houses, just endless white. Phone, I muttered, fumbling in my coat pocket. By some miracle, it was still there. The screen was cracked, but when I pressed the button, it lit up. No service. Of course, I breathed. I scanned the horizon, heart hammering. The ranch wasn't that far. The line shack was closer. If I could get there, there might be a landline. I need to go for help, I said, turning back to Caleb. The shack? No, he bit out. Too far on that ankle. And another storm coming. I looked up automatically. The once clear sky was already gathering clouds on the horizon, gray and heavy. We don't have a choice, I said. You need a doctor. He held my gaze, breathing hard. You can't walk that far in this, he said, throwing my words from weeks ago back at me. I'll crawl if I have to, I shot back, tears burning my eyes. I am not losing you in a ditch, Caleb. I am not. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Keys, he ground out finally. Take the truck's radio. Call it in. I blinked. There's a radio? Under the dash, he said, gesturing weakly. CB. Old, but it works. I scrambled back into the cab from the passenger side, digging until my fingers hit the cold metal of the radio box. With shaking hands, I flipped it on, static hissing. Hello? I said, voice trembling. Hello, can anyone hear me? For a moment, just static. Then, a crackle. This is Joe down at the county road station, came a tinny voice. Who's this? Relief flooded me. My name's Lena Hart, I said. I'm with Caleb Hayes. We slid off the north road by mile marker 12. He's hurt. I think his leg is broken. We need help. A pause. Hayes, huh? Joe said, voice sharpening. Got it. Sit tight. We'll get a truck out to you. 15-20 minutes, depending on the drifts. Please hurry, I whispered. Static hissed back. I turned the radio off and looked at Caleb. You hear that? I said. They're coming. You just have to hold on. He nodded, eyes closed, breaths coming in harsh, controlled pulls. Talk to me, he said through gritted teeth. Distract me. So I talked. I told him about the fake Christmas tree in my truck that was probably buried in a snowbank somewhere. About the way my mother used to burn the rolls every Christmas and pretend she meant to make extra crispy bread. I told him about how, when I was 8, my dad had left on Christmas morning a suitcase. An half-hearted apology. And how every Christmas after that, I'd lived with the feeling that someone could disappear at any moment. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I talked, freezing on my skin. Guess I'm not very distracting, I muttered at one point. Just depressing. He managed a weak chuckle that turned into a groan. You're real, he said. I'll take real over fake cheer any day. We both heard the siren at the same time, a distant wail cutting through the cold. See? I said, relief making me almost giddy. Told you I wouldn't let the storm take you. He opened his eyes, looking at me with something that looked like awe and terror mixed together. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Caleb! But the paramedics were there then. Voices sharp and professional, hands moving fast. They cut the frame, eased him onto a backboard, slid him into the ambulance. Ride with him? One of them asked me. Yes, I said without thinking. Hours later, in the harsh fluorescent light of the small county hospital, I heard the words that would change everything. The tibia shattered, the orthopedic surgeon said, studying the x-ray. We can repair it, put in a rod, but there's nerve damage too. He may never walk right again. Best case, he'll need a brace. Maybe a cane. No more heavy work. No bronc riding. No chasing runaway steers on foot. My chest squeezed. I looked at Caleb, pale and drawn on the bed. His jaw clenched so tight, I was surprised it didn't crack. The doctor left. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Caleb turned his head, eyes finding mine. It's okay, I said quickly, stepping closer, taking his hand. We'll adjust, we'll figure it out. The ranch can. He cut me off with a look I'd never seen on his face before. Cold. Closed. If you want to go, go now, he said flatly. The words hit me harder than the crash had. What? He swallowed hard, staring at the ceiling. You don't owe me anything, Lena, he said, voice hoarse. You don't have to chain yourself to a half-crippled rancher out of gratitude. Tears blurred my vision. You saved my life, I whispered. Do you really think I'd just walk away? His gaze slid back to mine. I think, he said slowly, each word like it hurt, you deserve a whole man. Not one who limps through your future. Anger, hot and sharp, surged through the hurt. And who decides what makes a man whole? I demanded, my voice shaking. You? Some doctor with a clipboard? My ex who thought my dreams were small? His jaw tightened. This isn't the same. It is, I snapped. It's exactly the same. Someone else deciding your worth based on whether you fit some perfect picture. He flinched, but he didn't take it back. Go back to your city, he said hoarsely. Find someone who can dance with you without worrying about falling. Someone who doesn't have to think about every step. My heart broke a little at the way his voice cracked on dance. I already found someone, I whispered. And he's lying here, feeling sorry for himself instead of letting me love him the way he's loved me since the day he pulled me out of a snowbank. Silence slammed down between us. I won't hold you to something you didn't sign up for, he said, stubbornness warring with pain in his eyes. And I won't leave, I said, just as stubborn. Not now. Not at Christmas. Not ever because you suddenly decided you're not enough. His eyes shone. You'll hate me, he whispered. When you're spending your days helping me get from chair to chair, you'll hate me for keeping you here. I shook my head, tears spilling over. I already spent years helping a man climb his own ladder while he told me I was too much. Too needy, too emotional, I said. I'd rather spend the rest of my life helping you learn how to walk a different way than one more minute helping someone else climb over me. My voice trembled. You're not the only one who's scared, I whispered. But I'm more scared of going back to being alone than I am of facing a future where we have to figure out new ways to do things. He turned his face away, jaw working. I need time, he ground out. My chest ached. Take it, I said. But hear me, Caleb Hayes. He looked back at me, eyes raw. I'm here, I said softly, fiercely. I'm not going anywhere. He swallowed hard. I leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead, my tears falling into his hair. Then, because I could see he was drowning in more than just physical pain, I stepped out into the hallway to let him breathe. That night, sitting alone in the hospital waiting room, I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. What if he never believes he's enough? The thought stole my breath. But underneath the fear, something else rose. Determination. We face this winter together now, I whispered to the empty room. Whether you're ready or not, cowboy. The next 10 days were a blur of hospital corridors, physical therapy evaluations, and long drives back and forth between the ranch and town. Caleb came home on Christmas Eve. He stepped, or rather, hobbled out of the truck on crutches, a bulky brace wrapped around his lower leg. His face was tight with pain and something that looked an awful lot like shame. "I can manage," he muttered when I moved to help. "I know you can," I said calmly, falling into step beside him. "And I'm still walking with you." He didn't answer, but he didn't tell me to go away either. Inside, the house felt both familiar and strange, like it had been holding its breath waiting for him. His sister Maggie had already dropped off the food and taken her kids home when the roads got bad again. She'd left a note on the counter that made my throat tighten. "We'll celebrate after the storm, Big Brother. You and that stubborn woman of yours rest." The night settled around us, quiet, the storm outside gentler now, more like a lullaby than a threat. We ate in near silence at the kitchen table, the clink of cutlery and the crackle of the fire the only sounds. After dinner, I cleared the plates and came back to find him staring at the Christmas tree, his crutches propped against the wall, his fingers flexing restlessly on his thigh. "Say it," he muttered when he noticed me watching. "Say what?" "That I'm a fool," he said, voice rough. "That I'm pushing away the best thing that has happened to me in years because I can to get past my own damn pride." I walked over and sat down on the couch beside him, leaving just enough space between us for him to choose whether to close it. "I wasn't going to say that," I said softly. "But since you brought it up..." A surprised huff of laughter escaped him. His shoulders slumped. "I keep hearing the doctor," he admitted. "He may never walk right again, like, that's the whole story of me now. The cowboy who limps. The rancher who can't run after his own stock." He swallowed hard. "Luke died doing what he loved," he said. "Moving, riding. I thought if I stayed strong and steady, at least one of us would be whole." He looked down at his brace, anger and grief twisting his features. "Now look at me." My heart squeezed. "Look at you," I said quietly. He frowned, glancing at me. "You took a tree for me," I said. "You shoved me out of the path of a falling branch and let it break you instead. You saved my life." Again. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not done," I said. He shut it, the corner of his mouth twitching despite himself. "You built this ranch," I went on, "and this home. You carried your brother's loss for years and turned it into a reason to protect instead of an excuse to punish. You walked into a storm you didn't have to ride into and pulled me out of the wreckage." My voice wavered, but I kept going. "And then, when the cost came due, your first instinct was to set me free," I whispered. "Not because you didn't want me, but because you loved me enough to risk losing me, if it meant I'd have an easier life." His breath hitched. "You call that broken, Caleb?" I asked. "Because where I come from, they call that whole." He stared at me, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You love me?" he whispered, like the words physically hurt. I smiled, even as my own tears slipped free. "Of course I do," I said. "Idiot!" A choked laugh broke out of him, followed by a sharp inhale as the movement jostled his leg. "Careful," I scolded gently. "You're fragile. Fragile my ass," he muttered. I scooted closer, closing the gap between us. My thigh pressed against his. "Caleb," I said softly, "you don't have to spend Christmas alone anymore." He sucked in a breath, eyes squeezing shut. "You keep saying that," he murmured. "Like you're sure." "I am sure," I said. "You're stuck with me now. Brace and all." His eyes opened slowly, meeting mine. "What if I fall?" he asked, voice raw. "What if I can't do the things you need? What if the ranch fails because I can't shoulder what I used to?" "Then we find different ways," I said without hesitation. "We hire more help, we sell off some stock if we need to. You teach instead of doing. You sit on a damn horse with a brace if that's what it takes. We adapt." I reached up and cupped his face, my thumb brushing the rough stubble on his jaw. "We face this winter together now," I whispered. He leaned into my touch just a fraction. "And next winter," I added. "And the one after that, and the one after that. Until we're old and yelling at the grandkids to get off the fence." A watery smile tugged at his mouth. "You planning on grandkids already?" He murmured. "I'm planning on a life," I said. "With you." He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "You feel like home," he breathed. I kissed the tear away. "So do you," I whispered. We sat there for a long time, wrapped in the glow of the tree and the crackle of the fire. The storm outside softened to a gentle hiss against the windows. At some point, he turned his body toward me as much as the brace and the couch would allow, one hand coming up to rest at my waist. "Stay close, please," he murmured. I slid my arms around him carefully, mindful of his leg, and leaned in. "I'm here," I whispered in his ear. "I'm not going anywhere." We kissed then, slow and deep, every touch full of all the things we hadn't had words for yet. He held me like I'd never been held. We let the Christmas night take the rest. The town Christmas social was held 3 weeks later in the church hall on Main Street. I stood by the punch table, smoothing my dress over my hips, my heart pounding harder than it had the day my truck went into the ditch. The room was strung with white lights and paper snowflakes, the air full of fiddle music and laughter and the smell of potluck casseroles. Kids ran underfoot, faces sticky with frosting. I glanced toward the door for the 10th time in as many minutes. "Relax," Cora murmured beside me, nudging my arm. "He'll come." "What if he doesn't?" I whispered. She gave me a look that said I was being ridiculous. "Sweetheart, that man has been calling down to the cafe every day asking what time you re-off," she said. "He's more nervous than you are." As if on cue, the door opened and a hush fell over the room for a heartbeat. Caleb stood in the doorway, the cold air swirling around him, hat in hand. He wore a clean button-down shirt, jeans that fit him just right, and a jacket that made his shoulders look even broader. His brace was visible under the fabric, the metal gleaming faintly when he moved. He leaned on a cane instead of crutches, his step slow but steady as he crossed the threshold. My breath caught. He froze when he saw me. So did I. For a long second, the room and the people and the music all faded. It was just us. Then kids darted past, someone laughed, and sound rushed back in. He made his way toward me, each step careful but determined. People clapped him on the shoulder as he passed, murmuring greetings. He nodded, but his eyes never left mine. When he reached me, he stopped, breath a little uneven from the effort. "You look," he cleared his throat. "You look beautiful." Heat rose in my cheeks. "So do you," I said, then winced. "I mean, handsome. You look..." "Good," he chuckled, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "Can I?" He gestured toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to a slow song. "You sure?" I asked softly, glancing at his leg. His eyes held mine, clear and certain. "We've got time," he said. "All the time we need." My heart squeezed. "I'd love to," I breathed. He handed his cane to Cora, who took it without comment, and we walked step by careful step onto the dance floor. He moved slower than he used to, I knew. His weight shifted differently now. But when he slid one arm around my waist and took my hand in his, the world righted itself. "I might step on your toes," he murmured. "I'll survive," I whispered back. We started to move. It wasn't the perfect, spinning sort of dance I'd imagined as a girl. It was smaller, more contained, each step measured. But it was ours. His hand was warm at my back, his breath brushing my temple. The music wrapped around us, soft and low. "You're safe with me," he murmured suddenly, the words catching on a breath. I pulled back just enough to look up at him. "And you," I said, "are safe with me." Emotion swam in his eyes. "You don't have to spend Christmas alone anymore," I added softly. He swallowed hard. "Neither do you," he said. We swayed like that, pressed close, surrounded by our little town and its twinkling lights and the winter night outside. If you've stayed with us all this way, if you felt the snow and the fire and the ache and the healing with us, thank you. If you want more slow-burn cowboy Christmas romances, you know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and pull your chair a little closer to the fire next time. Because, for me and Caleb, this was just the first of many winters. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear as the song ended and another began. "You are my home," he whispered. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but I was smiling. "I never thought Christmas could feel like this again," I breathed. He held me tighter, brace and all. As the lights blurred and the music swelled and the future stretched out before us like freshly fallen snow. "If you're here," he murmured, resting his forehead against mine. "I'm here," I nodded, my heart full and steady. "We face every winter together now," I whispered. And we did.